Pleasant. What this video series is going to go over, guys, is just the basics of human anatomy and physiology, introducing you to the major organ systems, as well as regional directional terms, as well as a little bit about the different planes of the body as well. This is kind of your first time taking a class like this. Remember, a lot of this is just going to be memorization of these terms and kind of getting an understanding as to what the terms mean. I recommend doing like flashcards, things like that, especially when you're dealing with those regional terms, antecubital, olecramal, and all those different types of things. So the first thing we're going to talk a little bit about is what is anatomy and what is physiology. Anatomy is to study the structure and the shape of the body and its parts. So when we take a look at an organ has different components to it. Like if we looked at the heart would have like a right atrium, a left atrium, a right ventricle, a left ventricle. It have a pulmonary artery, a pulmonary vein. That's the anatomy. It's the study of the structure of things and the shape of things. The physiology is how this structure works. So example of physiology might be how a muscle is able to contract. We'll go over the sliding filament theory of muscle contraction, or how a neuron is able to generate electrical impulse. That would be the physiology component of it. So the anatomy is the structure. The physiology is how that structure works or how that structure functions. There's different levels of anatomy. The first level that we have is gross anatomy. And we take a gross anatomy class in college. A lot of times this is the class that you take that has a cadaver in it where you're going to dissect a human being. It's looking at large structures, like looking at, this is where the liver is at. This is the large intestine. This is the small intestine. This is the duodenum. This is the jejunum. This is the ileum. Those different components, that's gross anatomy. That's looking at things that are easily observable that we can see with the naked eye. This diagram is just kind of showing you, this would be like an example of what a gross anatomist would do. Looking at the digestive system, I can see these large structures like the liver, the gallbladder, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, the mouth, the parotid glands as well. These are all structures that you can see. They're easily observable. That's what a gross anatomy is. Microscopic anatomy is looking at things that aren't able to be seen with the naked eye. So these structures can only be seen with the microscope. This would be looking at tissues. This would be looking at cells. That's microscopic anatomy. This example of a picture is taking a look and zooming in on the stomach and actually looking at the cells that are going to devise or develop these particular gastric juices that are going to be in the stomach. And that's a big example of microscopic anatomy. When we take a look at organization or how we organize things in anatomy, we start with the basic level of an atom. A group of atoms builds a molecule. A group of molecules is going to build a cell. Now we're at the cellular level. This is where life is at. This is the cellular level that's right here. And at this cellular level, if I take a group of exact same cells, if I take a group of a whole bunch of smooth muscle cells and I join them together, a whole bunch of adipose cells and join them together, a whole bunch of neurons and join them together, I'm going to wind up with what we call a tissue. So a tissue is a group of cells that are very similar to one another, all joined together, and that's when I wind up at the tissue level. If I take a group of different tissues, so I take a group of smooth muscle tissue, mix it with a group of connective tissue, add in a little bit of epithelial tissue, I'm going to wind up with what we call an organ. So a group of different tissue types joined together winds up at the organ level. This example here would be like a blood vessel. That's an organ. We can see we have connective tissue that's joined with smooth muscle that's working with the epithelial tissue as well. And this is going to be an artery that we're taking a look at here, but this is the organ level. If I take a look at different organs and I join them together, I'm going to build what we call organ systems. Your body is composed of 11 major organ systems that I'm going to talk about here in just a minute. This example would be if I take the heart, which is an organ, then I add to it all the major blood vessels, the arteries and the capillaries and the veins, I wind up with the cardiovascular system. If I take a group of different organ systems and I add them together, the next level that we're going to have is you, the individual, the organism. So I take all these organ systems, I join them together, and that's what's going to create you, the organism. So remember, starting from the beginning, we have a group of atoms. Group of atoms builds a molecule. Group of different molecules joined together builds a cell. Group of similar cells joined together, we wind up with a tissue. Group of different tissues, we wind up with an organ. Group of different organs, we wind up with organ systems. And we take all these organ systems and join them together, we wind up with a human being, which is you. The first major organ system we're going to talk about is the integumentary system. So the integumentary system is going to form the external body covering. The major organ of the integumentary system is going to be the skin. The major job or function of the integumentary system basically is protection. It's going to protect deeper tissue from injury. It's going to protect you from drying out as well. It helps regulate your body temperature embedded within your integumentary system. You have sweat glands. It's also the location that we find cutaneous nerve receptors that are going to communicate with the brain as to what's going on in the external environments, whether it's hot, whether it's cold, whether you've been stung by a bee. These different types of things are going to be done by the integumentary system. The integumentary system's major organ is the skin. It also includes hair and nails. Next major organ system that we have is the skeletal system. The major function of the skeletal system is going to be to protect and support body organs. Think about the protection that the skull does. The skull protects the brain that it's housed in. Your vertebrate's going to protect the spinal cord that's going to be in there. Your ribs are going to protect your heart and protect your lungs. Also, it provides a site where muscles are going to attach to. So muscles attach to the bone, and then they pull on that particular bone. So another function of the skeletal system is it's going to provide a place for muscle attachment. It's also the site of hematopoiesis. Hematopoiesis is red blood cell formation. So within that red bone marrow inside of bone is where we have hematopoiesis occurring, or red blood cell formation happening. As well as inside your bones is also a great storage area for a variety of minerals, including calcium. The major organs that are associated with the skeletal system are your bones, your joints, and cartilages. So bones, joints, and cartilages are the major organs that we have associated with the skeletal system. Next major organ system that we have is the muscular system. The muscular system is going to produce movement. So this is what produces movement, is your muscular system. It pulls on bones, and it's going to cause these bones to move. Muscular system is going to maintain posture. It keeps you upright, and as well as the muscular system is also going to produce heat. The major organ of the muscular system is the skeletal muscles themselves, from your quadriceps to your hamstrings to your biceps to your deltoids. These skeletal muscles are going to be the major organs that are associated with the muscular system. The next organ system that we have is the nervous system. The nervous system is your fast-acting control system that you have. And basically what it's going to do is the nervous system generates electrical impulses that travel throughout your body. These electrical impulses that are generated are going to fire into things like skeletal muscle and cause movement. They're also going to fire into things like glands and cause glands to release a particular substance. But most of the time the nervous system is going to fire into a muscle, it's going to fire into a gland, and it's going to cause some type of change to occur. If it fires into a muscle, this muscle is going to cause contraction. If it's going to fire into a gland, a lot of times this gland is going to release a particular hormone or a particular substance. The nervous system has ability to respond to internal and external changes. So it notices a change on the inside of your body, it's going to respond to it. It notices changes on the outside of your body, the nervous system is able to respond to those particular changes and then cause a direct response to occur from a result of those particular changes themselves. The nervous system consists of the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves associated coming off of the brain and the spinal cord. That is your nervous system. Your nervous system acts very fast, but the downfall of the nervous system is you continually have to send these electrical signals. It's a fast-acting control center or control system of your body, whereas the endocrine system that we have, which is another organ system, is it acts a lot more slowly. It releases what we call hormones, but these hormones are longer lasting. These hormones will last a lot longer than the firing of the electrical impulses which you have to continuously do with the nervous system. So the endocrine system's going to release hormones. These hormones are going to control things like growth, reproduction, and metabolism. Your endocrine system consists of glands, and these are some of the major glands of the body that you can see: the adrenal glands, the pancreas, producing the glucagon and the insulin that many of you guys know about. But glands, or endocrine glands, are the major organs of the endocrine system. We have the cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular system is basically your transport mechanism of fluids throughout your body. So basically you're going to transport these fluids, or these materials that are in this blood are going to be transported via the cardiovascular system. It's going to pump things that are going to be like oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, and waste products throughout your body, is what the cardiovascular system does. The cardiovascular system consists of a pump, which is the major organ that we call the heart, and then these tubules that the blood's going to flow in that we call arteries, veins, and capillaries, or they're just commonly all grouped together and called blood vessels. Moving right along, we have the lymphatic system, which is another organ system that's responsible for immunity. The lymphatic system is often known as your immune system that you have. Basically, your lymphatic system is going to consist of what we call lymph nodes, and then it has lymph vessels and ducts as well. So that's your lymphatic system with the lymph nodes, lymph vessels, and then these thoracic ducts are also included in your lymphatic system. This is majorly responsible, involved in immunity. Respiratory system. Your respiratory system is going to keep your blood supplied with oxygen is basically what it's going to do. It also helps remove carbon dioxide from the blood as a waste product that you exhale. The major organs of the respiratory system are going to be your lungs, your trachea, your larynx, your pharynx. These are all major organs that are associated with the respiratory system. Digestive system. Digestive system is basically going to break down food. It's going to break down food small enough so that it can be absorbed into the bloodstream. And then this food is going to get uptake by cells that are hanging outside your bloodstream. And then once we take in these nutrients, your body's going to rearrange these nutrients and be able to build different things out of them. Or it might be able to just rearrange these molecules to build something like an ATP molecule or something like that as well. But the job of the digestive system is going to be to break down food molecules small enough so they can be absorbed into the bloodstream. And then those products that aren't able to be digested get eliminated as indigestible material that comes out as fecal matter. Major organs of your digestive system are things like your stomach, your small intestine, your large intestine, your esophagus, are all major organs that are associated with your digestive system. Next major system that we have is the urinary system. Urinary system is going to deal with liquid waste. It's going to maintain acid-base balance. Basically, it's going to take harmful things that aren't needed by your blood. It takes them out of your blood, keeps the good things in your blood is basically what the urinary system is going to do. So your urinary system is going to eliminate things that aren't needed in your blood, and it's going to keep things in that are needed by your blood. It's going to keep those things in there. It regulates your acid-base balance. It also regulates your water and electrolyte balance of your body as well. The organs that are associated with the urinary system are your kidneys, your ureter, your urinary bladder, and your urethra. Are all organs that are associated with your urinary system. Remember, your urinary system is dealing with cleaning out your blood, taking the bad things out or things your body doesn't need at that time, and leaving things in that are needed in your blood. One of the things that's removed from your blood is nitrogen. We call it nitrogen waste, is why we call it nitrogenous waste. That's removed from your blood is one of those things that we're going to get rid of. Reproductive system. Reproductive system's major job is to produce offspring. We know the major organs of the reproductive system. In a male, it's the penis. In the female, it's the vagina. The next thing that we talked a little bit about in class is we talked a little bit about directional terms. And these directional terms that we talked about, the first ones that we dealt with, we got out our mannequins, we created some tape flags, and on these tape flags, we posted these little tape flags representing these different areas that are representing these directional terms. The first one we have is superior and inferior. Superior is towards the head end, okay, is towards the head end of the body. Inferior is away from the head end of the body. Or if we're looking at an organ, superior means the upper portion of the structure, whereas inferior means the lower portion of the structure. So superior and inferior. These arrows are representing superior, which is towards your head, inferior, which is away from your feet. But if also I'm dealing with an organ, the superior end is going to be the top part of the organ. The inferior portion is that bottom part of the organ itself. Ventral, anterior, they mean the same thing. Ventral and anterior mean the exact same thing in a human being because we're bipedal and we stand on two legs as opposed to being a quadruped when you're standing on all four. Anterior and ventral. Ventral means belly side. When we say ventral, ventral means belly side, and anterior means towards the front of. Dorsal means spine side, and posterior means the back side of the body or behind is what posterior means when we take a look at this. Remember, when we're using these directional terms, we're assuming that the human being is standing in what we call anatomical position. This is what that anatomical position looks like. Notice that the human being, guys, is standing upright and their palms are facing outward. Their palms are facing outward when we're talking about anatomical position. The reason that we use these directional terms is why these directional terms are key is because we want to be able to talk the same talk when using anatomy. So if I'm using ventral and dorsal and I'm using, like posterior, anterior, these terms that I'm going to use are going to be used and I'm going to use to describe the location of one structure and compared to another one. Whereas, if we're all talking the same talk, then we don't get confused, which is why we have these directional terms to kind of explain the direction or the location of one structure compared to another structure in the human body. Now, like I said, guys, these terms are a little bit different when we talk about looking at a quadruped, which I'm going to show you next. So like I said, guys, when I look at a human being is standing upright. This is my little human being here. This is a little arm that's right here. So we know that the anterior means towards the front. So this is the anterior, which means front. We know that ventral means the belly side. So this anterior and ventral can be used exactly the same way, because this is the front of the human being, and this is also the belly side as well. So anterior and front mean exactly the same thing when we're taking a look at a human being that's standing bipedally. If I look at posterior, posterior means back. Okay, so this is the back side of this human being that's here. We'll give him a little hair so you kind of know there. And then we also know that dorsal means spine side. This is the spine side of this bipedal person that's here. Now, when I go to a little kitty cat, if I take a look at a kitty cat now, so I'll draw a little kitty cat over here. This is a little kitty cat. Give him a little frowny face here. Give him some ears. There's his little tail. Meow, meow. Okay, the front of the kitty cat, this is the anterior portion of the kitty cat. So this is the anterior portion. This is the posterior portion of him, because this is the back side of him. Okay, this is the ventral side of him. This is the belly side. And this is the dorsal side. So you can see, guys, when you take a look at this diagram here, that how these terms are a little bit different when you move into a quadruped as opposed to just being simply bipedal. Anterior means front, posterior means dorsal. Posterior means back. Dorsal means spine side, ventral means belly side. So in a quadruped, this means something completely or a little bit different how we label these structures as compared to a human being when you're using these particular directional terms. So there's your anterior, ventral. This is your posterior and dorsal, how we would represent it on a human being. Midline or medial means towards the midline of the body. So medial means towards the midline. Lateral means away from the midline of the body. Somewhere in between, we give that a term that's called intermediate. This is how that is represented: medial towards the midline, lateral away from the midline. Somewhere in between, we call that intermediate. Proximal is closer to the point of attachment, and distal is further away from the point of attachment. That's how we use proximal and distal. When you use proximal and distal, guys, a lot of times we're referring to the arms and the legs. So I would say that my wrist is distal to my elbow. So my wrist is distal to my elbow. My wrist is further away from the point of attachment in comparison to my elbow. That's proximal and distal that you can see. So this is proximal, closer to the point of attachment. The point of attachment for my arms is my shoulder. The point of attachment for my legs is right here at my hip. This is distal, further away from those points of attachment. That's proximal and distal. Superficial and deep. Superficial is towards the body surface, and deep is away from the body surface. So I could have a superficial cut, which is like really close to the body surface. A deep cut, I'm probably going to need some type of suture for because I've gone through all the layers of the skin. Here we're representing superficial towards the surface, and deep is within. The other thing that we talked a little bit about in class, guys, were regional terms. And regional terms are going to be used to describe particular regions of the body. We take a look at anterior portion of the body. We have certain regional terms that we use to describe the head. The head is called the cephalic region. So the head is called the cephalic regions. Some of the ones that we talked about were the eye region is called the orbital region. The nose region is called the nasal region. The cheek region is called the buccal region. The mouth region is called the oral region. Your neck is called your cephalic region. When we take a look at the chest of your body, your chest is called your thoracic region. Inside your thoracic region, the midline of this thoracic region that's right here is called your sternal region. Your armpit is called your axillary region. Think Axe deodorant. That's your axillary region. Your abdominal region, the middle of your abdominal region is called your umbilical region that we have here. In your groin area here, we have what we call the inguinal region, or inguinal region that is there. The front of your leg is called your femoral region. The front of your knee is called the patellar region. We take a look at your ankles are called the tarsal region. When we move up to your arm is called your brachial region. This front of your elbow is called the antecubital region. Your wrist is called your carpal region when we take a look at them. So those are some of the major regional terms that we talked a little bit about in class and we put on our mannequin. When we look at behind the posterior portion of our body as far as regional terms are concerned, we take a look at the neck again. The neck is called the cervical region that we take a look at. So the neck is called the cervical region. The back of the head is called the occipital region. The back of the head is the occipital region. Where my shoulder blade is at, we call that the scapular region. The middle of the back is called the vertebral region. My lower back is called my lumbar region. My buttocks are called my gluteal region or gluteal region. My lower back here beneath my lumbar region is called my sacral region as well. The back of my thigh is still called the femoral region. The back of my knee is called my popliteal region. When I take a look at my ankles is still called my tarsal region, whereas the heel of my foot is called the calcaneal region, and then the sole of my foot is called the plantar region. So those are some of the major regional terms that we use to describe specific locations of the body or specific regions of the body. Final thing I'm going to talk a little bit about, guys, is different planes of the body that we have. So the first type of plane that I have is what we call a median plane, and this is going to give you a different image. If you dissect something this way, or you get an MRI taken this particular way, you're going to get a different image of the body depending upon how we slice it. A median cut is basically, or a median plane is dividing it into right and left segment. Okay, it's dividing it into a right segment and a left segment. Now, if it's an equal right and left, it's what we call a mid-sagittal plane, and this is the type of image here that you're going to get. If you take a mid-sagittal plane or a median plane of the human body, it's going to look a little bit like that. Whereas a frontal plane of the body is cutting it into an anterior portion and a posterior portion. And this is the type of view that you would get if you were to make that type of plane or that type of cut in the human body that you can see beneath this image right here. Whereas a transverse plane is going to divide it into a superior and an inferior section as well, is what it's going to do. And you can see its corresponding image that's going to be there. So you have a median plane, you have a frontal or coronal plane, and you have a transverse plane, are the major planes of the human body that we can cut, we can dissect a specimen this way, or we can get an image taken that particular way with an MRI, and it's going to all have a different view depending upon how we're looking at, depending on what type of plane that we're going to look at the human being in. So as you can see, guys, I went over a ton of material, knowing the basic regional terms, directional terms, the major organ systems, their organs that are associated with them, the function, as well as these planes of the body. What is anatomy and physiology? How is the body organized as far as we take atoms, build a group of atoms, builds a molecule, and then etc. like that. Covered a lot of material in this. And I know that this test you're looking forward to taking, or you might be a little bit nervous. Like I said, the best way to probably prepare for this particular test is do the review guide that I gave you. Create flashcards for you to kind of go over with. If you have any questions, guys, don't hesitate to see me before school, after school, or just ask me a question in class if you're confused. I wish you the best of luck in preparing for the test and for studying.